Welcome to Podcast Summaries, where every week we break down powerful ideas from 8 to 10 top podcasts to help you grow, heal, and thrive while saving time. If you find this summary helpful, please subscribe and check out links for more content. Your support keeps this journey going. Here is a summarized version of Eric Weinstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a front. The collapse has already started, featuring Eric Weinstein by Stephen Bartlett. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein about his thoughts on the CIA and FBI. Eric Weinstein responds by sharing a personal experience with Jeffrey Epstein, who he believes was not a financier, but rather a front for something more sinister. Weinstein expresses his frustration that people don't investigate Epstein's true nature and the powerful people who enabled him. Eric Weinstein's thoughts are consumed by the apocalypse in physics. He points to the recent conflicts in the Middle East and the rise of drone warfare as evidence of this. Weinstein thinks that the world is becoming increasingly tense and that the era of stasis is over. He believes that the only way to prevent catastrophe is for people to come to their senses and take action. However, he's not sure what that would look like or how to achieve it. Stephen Bartlett asks Weinstein about the state of society in terms of feelings of meaning and purpose. He believes that the design of modern life is optimized for individualism, but that this is ultimately unsatisfying and leads to a sense of disconnection. Weinstein thinks that people are unhooking from the superstructures of the world, such as family and tradition, and that this is leading to a sense of disorientation and disconnection. He believes that people need to care about their legacy and the future in order to feel a sense of purpose and meaning. Weinstein's conversation with Stephen Bartlett is a call to action, urging people to wake up to the reality of the world and to take action to prevent catastrophe. He believes that something remarkable needs to happen in order to give people a future and a sense of purpose. Eric Weinstein believes that the world is on the brink of collapse and the current state of affairs is unsustainable. He thinks that the biggest problem is that we share one atmosphere, and everything that can go wrong, whether it's pathogens, climate change, or radiation, doesn't respect borders. He's concerned that we've become powerful enough to screw up the planet, and he thinks that Elon Musk is right in saying that we need to get to another sphere, whether it's the moon or Mars, to ensure our survival. Eric Weinstein is frustrated that people are not taking the threat of collapse seriously enough. He thinks that we're too focused on short-term gains and not thinking about the long-term consequences of our actions. He believes that we need to start caring about the future, not just for ourselves, but for our great-great-grandchildren. He's worried that we're running out of time and that the collapse is already happening. Eric Weinstein is also critical of the way we think about AI. Eric Weinstein's conversation with Stephen Bartlett is a call to action. He's urging people to wake up and start paying attention to the world around them. He's urging them to start thinking about the long-term consequences of their actions and to start caring about the future. He's warning them that the collapse is already happening and that it's time to take action. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein about the career advice he would give to his children, considering the future that's unfolding. Eric Weinstein shares that he's given his children different advice. To his son, he suggested doing the hardest, most technical thing possible, and being prepared to use that ability in different ways. To his daughter, who cares deeply about people, he encouraged her to use her analytical skills to help those in need, perhaps in the field of law. However, he notes that every occupation that's currently named is likely to become obsolete. He advises people to be flexible, learn to think across disciplines, and develop a range of skills. He emphasizes that it's not about being world-class, but about being able to adapt and find meaning in life. Eric Weinstein reflects on how he finds meaning in the simple things, like eating a rambutan or listening to Pablo Casal's cello suites. He believes that everyone has the capacity to find meaning, but it requires a certain mindset. He notes that people often get caught up in optimization and trying to achieve more, but forget to appreciate the beauty in everyday things. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein if he's always been able to find meaning in the world, or if it's something he's cultivated over time. Eric Weinstein responds that he's always been drawn to the beauty in things, but it's also something that can be developed. He notes that people like Joe Rogan have a way of finding meaning in unexpected places, like the world of MMA. Eric Weinstein shares that he's always been fascinated by the way people can find meaning in the world, even in the simplest things. He notes that everyone has a unique perspective and way of seeing the world, and that's what makes life so rich and interesting. He believes that people should be encouraged to explore their own interests and passions, rather than trying to fit into predetermined roles or expectations. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein if he thinks that the ability to find meaning is a privilege, or if it's something that can be cultivated. Eric Weinstein responds that he thinks it's a bit of both. He notes that some people may have a natural inclination towards finding meaning, but it's also something that can be developed through practice and experience. Eric Weinstein reflects on how he's always been drawn to the beauty in the world, even in unexpected places. He notes that people often overlook the beauty in everyday things, like a glass of water or a fly buzzing around. He believes that everyone has the capacity to find meaning, but it requires a certain mindset and way of seeing the world. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein about his thoughts on Elon Musk and what he thinks makes him tick. Eric Weinstein responds that he thinks Elon is a quintessential American with a cowboy spirit and a willingness to take risks. He notes that Elon is driven by a desire to make a difference in the world, and that he's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. Eric Weinstein reflects on how he thinks Elon's approach to life is inspiring, even if he doesn't always agree with his methods. He notes that Elon is a true original, and that he's not afraid to think outside the box. He believes that Elon's passion and energy are infectious, and that he's inspired a whole generation of people to think differently about the world. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein about his thoughts on the current state of the world, and what he thinks is the biggest challenge facing humanity. Eric Weinstein responds that he thinks the biggest challenge is the lack of understanding and empathy between different cultures and communities. Eric Weinstein reflects on how he thinks the world is at a crossroads, and that the choices we make now will determine the course of human history. He notes that people have the power to create positive change, but it requires a willingness to listen, learn, and adapt. He believes that the future is uncertain, but that it's also full of possibilities and opportunities for growth and transformation. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein if he thinks the leader of Hamas, Sinwar, would be happy to see the people of Gaza invade Israel, even if it meant their own deaths. Eric Weinstein responds that Sinwar would indeed be happy to see the Gazans die, as his goal is not the well-being of his people, but rather to create a situation in which Israel would be compelled to respond using the wrong tools. He believes that Sinwar has tricked Israel into responding in a way that would ultimately harm their own interests. Eric Weinstein explains that the key to understanding this situation is to look at the effect of the video footage of the conflict in Gaza. He believes that the video has turned the world against Israel, and that this is a deliberate strategy on the part of Sinwar and Hamas. He cites the doctrine of hybrid warfare, which emphasizes the importance of social media and video in shaping public opinion. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein if there is any way back from the current situation, and Eric responds that the way back is slim and evaporating. He believes that the only way to resolve the conflict is for the Persian people to rise up against their oppressors, and for the US and other Western powers to take responsibility for their role in creating the current situation. Eric Weinstein explains that the US and the UK have a long history of interfering in the Middle East, and that this has created many of the problems that we see today. He believes that the US needs to take ownership of its history in the region, and to recognize the harm that it has caused. He also believes that the US needs to be more strategic in its approach to the region, and to stop trying to impose its will on other countries. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein what he would do if he were president, and Eric responds that he would not be discussing his strategy on a podcast. He believes that a president needs to be able to negotiate and make deals behind closed doors, and that this requires a certain level of secrecy and strategic thinking. He also believes that the US needs to stop giving so many press conferences and tweeting every 4 seconds, and to focus on finding a long-term solution to the conflict. Eric Weinstein expresses his frustration with the current state of international relations, and his belief that the world is a brutal and unforgiving place. He believes that the US and other Western powers need to be more realistic about their goals and limitations, and to stop trying to impose their will on other countries. He also believes that the US needs to take responsibility for its role in creating the current situation, and to work towards finding a long-term solution to the conflict. Stephen Bartlett shares a picture of the Flower of Life geometric model, which sparks a conversation about the nature of reality. Eric Weinstein reveals that he's kept a secret for 30 years about his belief in the existence of more than the 4 dimensions we experience. He thinks that there may be 14 dimensions, and that our reality might be an illusion. Eric explains that he's a physicist who's been exploring the idea of a hidden world, where all 6 edges and 4 vertices of a tetrahedron are dimension. He believes that physics has gone stagnant, and that the way we measure progress is flawed. Eric shares an example of how a small idea, like the concept of a neutral proton, can lead to a chain of events that can change the world. He mentions that the Department of Energy is really the Department of Physics, and that there's a doctrine of restricted data that prohibits physicists from discussing certain topics. Eric's theory of everything proposes that there are dimensions beyond the ones we know, and that time may not be one-dimensional. He explains that if time is not one-dimensional, there may not be an arrow of time, and that we may be able to go back in time without going back through time. He mentions that there's a hidden world of national security, and that the penalty for talking about it is personal destruction. Eric reveals that the US faked a UFO program and that there are fake special access programs that are not even on the books. He explains that the government keeps secrets, and that the cost of letting people know about these secrets is personal destruction. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein why the government would fake UFO sighting. Eric Weinstein explains that the government might have been working on a secret aerospace project and wanted to create a cover story to distract from it. Eric Weinstein suggests that the government might have created a UFO story to make other countries believe they had advanced technology, thereby deterring them from attacking. Eric Weinstein also talks about the concept of managed reality, where the government and other powerful entities control the narrative and shape public perception. He believes that Jeffrey Epstein was a construct, created to serve multiple purposes, including controlling science and funding research. Eric Weinstein expresses his frustration with the government's handling of sensitive information and the restrictions placed on physicists. He believes that physicists should have free speech and be able to discuss their research openly, without fear of retribution. He also mentions that he has been warned about discussing certain topics, and that his employer is a special informant to the FBI. Eric Weinstein's conversation with Stephen Bartlett is a glimpse into the complex and often secretive world of science, politics, and intelligence. He raises important questions about the role of government in controlling information and the impact it has on individuals and society. As the conversation continues, it becomes clear that Eric Weinstein is not just discussing abstract concepts, but is also sharing his personal experiences and concerns about the world we live in. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein about his recent visit to a physics department, where he spent 5 days as a visitor and gave a talk. Eric Weinstein shares his frustration with the secrecy surrounding his visit, feeling that he's not allowed to discuss it openly. He expresses his exhaustion with the lack of transparency in various fields, including physics, the Middle East, and the national economy. Eric Weinstein responds by explaining that the concept of peer review, which is often touted as a cornerstone of scientific integrity, is actually a myth. He argues that peer review originated in the medical literature as a way for doctors to justify medical procedures to the federal government, and was later adopted by the National Science Foundation as a self-defense mechanism. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein about his thoughts on the power of science and its potential to transform the world. Eric Weinstein responds by highlighting the incredible advancements that science has made possible, from creating new currencies to generating music and animating photos. He expresses his excitement about the potential for science to take us to the stars and to explore the infinity of space. Eric Weinstein also shares his personal experiences as a father, taking his children to watch meteor showers and encouraging them to dream big about their legacy. He advises the listener to get married, have kids, and try to make a positive impact on the world. Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein to offer some actionable advice to the listener, and Weinstein responds by suggesting that they try to keep an open mind, be good to each other, and have fun before it's too late. He also encourages the listener to get involved in their community, to care about the people living in dire situations, and to wish their country's leadership well, even if they didn't vote for them. Finally, Stephen Bartlett asks Eric Weinstein to answer a question left by the previous guest, which is, what is the problem that you are doing the most mental gymnastics to avoid? Eric Weinstein declines to answer, citing that it's not appropriate for the audience, but acknowledges that it's a great question. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe. Check out YouTube channel and just remember, subscription is only £1 or $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening.